Hi, everyone, and very welcome to the PIC preliminary round from wherever you happen to be. In fact, feel free to use the chat already and tell us where you are. Where are you based? I'm in Spain. Alex, where are you based?
I'm in Denver, Colorado today.
This is the 11th time we've run the Process Innovation Challenge. Well, what is it? Simply put, it's a place where innovators in the localization industry get to show their ideas to an audience. That's all of you, of course. So this time round, innovations are covering lots of different areas, which is one of the things we really like to see at the PIC, from neural machine translation, micro content, continuous localization, terminology, and caffeine is in there as well, would you believe? We promise you 8 innovations today at lightning speed, which is what we do here at the PIC. But look, also feel free to slow down or speed up and have a cup of joe to hand. And let's see how all this works out. Alex?
So again, welcome everyone to the 11th Process Innovation Challenge. It's been such a pleasure to work with Dave Ruan and our team on this. I'm really excited to welcome back one of our longtime dragons. I have 2 new dragons too that we'll get to in just a second. Without help and support, there's no way this could be possible. They've been taking time and reviewing our submissions and help us determine who goes on to our final round. I'd also like to briefly plug the upcoming LocWorld's 45 conference that's taking place on October 19th through the 21st. And the final round of the Process Innovation will take place as part of that on Wednesday, October 10th. So we hope you'll join us then. You do need to be registered for LocWorld's in order to attend that final round.
Well, enough of the plugging. What are the rules? Look, if you've been here before, you know how this works. Today is what we call the 3cubed session, right? So that means 3 innovators have, sorry, not 3 innovators, it's 8 innovators, have 3 minutes each innovator, right? They can use 3 slides or thereabouts, and we have 3 dragons. So let's introduce our dragons, shall we? Alex already alluded to who they were. Well, Esther Curiel, very welcome, Esther.
Hi, Esther.
Hey, Esther. Hey, we have so Esther has done this before. Cornelia, this is your first time round. Welcome.
Yes, this is my first rodeo, so to say. Or to speak with Madonna like a virgin.
Thanks very much, Cornelia. And Peter,
but I do a lot of hackathon judging inside of Salesforce Commerce Cloud Engineering. And I've been around the block a few times with patents and other innovations. So to do something like this now for the localization industry, that's really exciting. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the team, Cornelia.
Thanks, Cornelia. And Peter, very welcome to you as well.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. Dialing in from Carlsbad, Southern California, just north of San Diego. So excited to be here. This is my first rodeo as well. So looking forward to hearing all the pitches and good luck.
Welcome, Peter.
Welcome, dragons. Looks like we have a few first rodeos. Alex, it's not your first rodeo.
No. But I'm still having trouble staying on the bucking bronco, but we'll see how we do here.
Well, let's have a look at our running order, right? So we've 8 innovations. Good to see some new names and a few folks familiar to the PIC as well. Welcome, everybody. Good luck. That's the small talk done. Let's get down to business. Let the PIC prelims begin. And first up is Takeyoshi-san. So this is someone who has been here before. Join us on stage, will you? And we'll get you started.
Okay, so when the clock starts.
Over to you, Takeyoshi.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Takeyoshi Nakayama from Human Science. We have developed a unified terminology management system to improve our localization business. We also provide this system to our customers as part of our machine translation solution. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. Using the grocery function of empty engines is the key to improve the empty output. If you use it wisely, the terms in the empty output will be correct. It has more positive effects than training the empty models with your corpus. But the grocery functions of common empty engines are not sufficient, and it is often difficult to manage as a daily task. For example, with DPair, English-Japanese pair is not supported with their grocery function. And also grocery is not supported in cat tools. With Google, uploading of the whole grocery file is needed when only a term in the grocery is added or modified. With Microsoft, training of translation models is needed to use the glossary, which takes hours to complete. Papago, which translates Korean language very well, does not support the glossary. Next slide, please. The solution is mTrans Online, a unified terminology management system. This is a new web service that allows you to manage glossaries of multiple empty engines in a unified manner. You can add, change, and delete terms from the web browser, so the project managers and the linguists can easily manage terms as a daily task. You can import and export glossaries in CSV, TSV, or TBX format. The best benefit is that this system adds the glossary function to all of the empty engines. So empty engines with a limited built-in glossary function, such as DeepL and Papago, can now have the full glossary function. Next slide, please. mTrans Online works with MemSource, Trado Studio, and Microsoft Office applications, including Outlook, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. With this system, the translation quality is improved by facilitating the use of the glossary function. The time to post-edit is reduced because post-editors do not have to worry about the terms used in the empty output. They can now focus on the accuracy and fluency of the translation. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Takeyoshi.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Neural machine translation. Always had a challenge with terminology and linking in with the other parts of the localization process. Looks like you found some solutions there. Let's turn to our dragons and ask them what they think. Have they got questions for you? So dragons, what do you think?
Thank you so much for Takeyoshi-san for the presentation. One question. So is this now optimized for machine translation, or can it also be used in other regular localization workflows, in the traditional human translation, human editing workflow?
This system wraps the empty engines. So it changes the empty output. So it works with the machine translation.
Okay, so it's specifically for machine translation and
yes,
uses the glossaries. Where do you get the glossaries? How do you feed them in? How do you find them?
The project manager or linguist can import all the glossary like you are using right now.
Okay, so a manual import, but then an automatic use by the machine translation system.
Yes, the machine translation output that will use the terms in the glossary instead of the raw empty output.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
the post-editor do not have to check it and modify it.
Have you tested it? Have you
yeah, it works.
It works.
Yeah.
But what is the percentage of accuracy gain or errors avoided? Do you have any? Can you quantify how much of a difference this makes?
Yeah, basically the the edit distance, like before the post editors had to replace the word, like company name, service name, product name. But now the empty output uses the correct terms. So the edit distance is much shortened now.
Okay, thank you. Those were the questions from my side.
Thank you, Cornelia. Dragons, any more questions for Takeyoshi?
Yeah, hi, Takeyoshi. This is Peter. Thanks for the presentation. Quite interesting. My question is, what milestones or traction, if any, have you been able to hit?
Milestone?
Yeah, I mean, what progress have you made with the actual system? Is this something that can be used right now, or is this still?
Yeah, it is actually provided to our customers who uses our machine translation solution. And also as a translation company, ourselves, we use it daily. Okay, all right. And how many translations can you handle simultaneously? Actually, almost limitless. It works in the cloud, and the empty engines are actually from Google, DeepL, Microsoft, Apple, and they are cloud-based too. So there is no actual limit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Shall we move on? I think we can. Thank you very much, Takeyoshi-san. Great to see you again, and good luck. And we'll move on to our next innovator, who is Alex Akakis. So Alex, can you join us on stage?
Good to go here.
Great. Alex, let's get you started.
All right, folks. Hi, everybody. Alex Akakis here. I'm going to talk about the intelligent quality assurance layer. So what we've done essentially is we've looked beyond the traditional model of translation and QA, which is an intertwined process. It happens during translation and it falls back to the translator, the linguist, to perform this, and then it goes to delivery. What happens in between is actually a bit of a mystery. We don't know about the results, we don't review them, we cannot validate them, and we typically hope that they did their due diligence. What we propose is to add this layer and change the current setup, which is from moving to translation and then to a layer of quality assurance, create a controlled halo, which then moves on to the delivery of the project, making sure that quality is adhered to during that first step of the process. Next slide, please. The workflow of this is actually quite simple. We have a translation management system. Therein, we have localization workflows. We continually listen to these workflows. We make sure that whenever there is a transition from a translation step to a next step, we send the data through the API. We gather all the necessary information about the project. We gather, for example, the translation data, the XLIF, and then we send it to a QA tool with custom profiles and custom acceptance levels. Depending on the outcome of that, we weigh it and we say, okay, if it's a pass, then we send it back to the TMS. If it's a fail, we send it back. And depending on that information that is sent to the TMS, we create this infinite loop, this infinite workflow that goes on and on and on until the quality is of acceptable levels. Next slide, please. Let's see it in action though right away. And we have a quick video demonstration for you here. So we have our TMS. Within the TMS, we have a workflow, we have a translation workflow step. And if we open that from the view of the linguist, we can see that immediately the linguist sees several blatant errors. Don't think the video is loading, Dave. There we go. Perfect, thank you. So here we have a very simple translation task, and you can see in the target we have blatant errors. We have excessive punctuation marks being added, which are quality assurance errors. Of course, the linguist can deliver. They can still finish their task, but let's do it now. What's going to happen in this case with our implementation is it goes to the next step. We listen to that, we send it through the API, we gather all the custom acceptance levels and everything, and depending on the results, it either progresses or it moves back to the previous workflow step. So in this case, once the screen refreshes, what you will see is that we've gone back to translation because obviously we have quality assurance issues within that specific delivery. Again, the translator is given an opportunity to fix it. Along with that, we also submit metadata back to the system. We send a fail, a pass mark of a fail, along with the quality assurance report so that the linguist knows actually what to fix. And this goes on and on. On the flip side, if we deliver a proper translation without any quality assurance issues, as we do here, what's going to happen now is the same flow of events. It goes through the API, it's being sent to the quality assurance tool. We have the acceptance levels and the custom profiles. We weigh the results, but this time around, there's of course no issues. That means that as soon as we refresh, the task is being completed instead of it moving back to the translator, effectively also updating the metadata, sending a pass mark of a pass, and the associated QA report. This is an endless loop. It goes on and on and on. And of course, it's fully customized. And the best thing about it is that it's not tool or system dependent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. Dragons, do we have questions on this Agile quality, automatic quality system here?
Yes, Hans. Esther, you go first, please.
Thanks very much, Cornelia. Alex, that was really interesting. I'd love to understand more if the checks are configurable. Yeah, are they your in-built checks within XDM?
The checks are fully configurable, and they're configurable on a very granular level. In XTM, we call it a custom, or it could be anything of a TM repository or equal. So they're fully configurable on that level. And of course, they can be extended with regular expressions and whatnot. That is typically dependent on the QA tool itself, right? What the capabilities it has. The connectivity, however, allows for customization.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, Esther, I was going in the same direction. Alex, thank you so much. Super interesting.
Great minds and all that, Cornelia.
What quality criteria do I have to imagine? What am I, can you give some more examples what we're testing for here? Is this strictly linguistic? Is it contextual? Is it grammar? Is it style? What are the quality criteria? If you could maybe give me 3 examples.
Absolutely. It is, of course, pattern-based automated quality assurance checks that most tools perform, or QA tools, third-party systems perform, right? By patterns, we mean validating, for example, the use of proper terminology, inconsistencies, punctuation marks, capitalization, numerics, untranslated segments, same source and target, things like those, along with potentially, and that always depends on the quality assurance tool's capabilities, regex patterns or regular expressions that can be introduced to extend that even further. But the base here is the QA check that is performed within a typical cut tool. That is what's being essentially replicated in this controlled process.
And then why do we need it? How is this new? Because this is something that many TMS systems do already, right? After
Absolutely.
the translation pass, they have a lot of, and I can customize some of the controls that are being run, and they're flagged either as a warning, or I get an error, or I can't even move on to the next segment, depending how the settings are. So how is this different from what's already in the market?
Oh, it's vastly different to what's already in the market, with the one point about what you mentioned. You run it. So the person responsible for the translation is the recipient of these quality assurance errors, and then the responsible party for fixing them as they translate, right? As you said yourself, moving from one segment to another. Mm-hmm. There are certain QA checks that you could make, for example, obligatory, right? So don't allow for empty segments to be delivered or something along those lines, but you cannot extend it across all your quality assurance checks to force, I would say, a blocker for the completion of the project, of the task. So what we're introducing here is an automation that takes the rules, it takes acceptance levels. So what do we accept in terms of the risk? How many QA errors per X words can we live with, depending on the category and the weight of that specific error type? Let's say, how many terminology errors do we accept potentially, right? When we validate this on the fly, now what's happening there is that the weight and the responsibility moves from the translator to an automated system that fully controls it and does not allow in any possible way that a delivery occurs unless it's within the acceptable threshold. So we take it away from the individual linguist and we put it into a centralized mechanism across our entire system and all the projects therein.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Understand a little more now. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelia. Thank you, Alex. We'll move on, and we'll take more questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat as well, and perhaps our innovators will answer you back. And we have people from all over. Thanks for calling out some of your locations there: Illinois, California, Cape Cod, and you know, one of the things that we like about this is, you know, innovation can come from anywhere, you know, and just don't let anyone tell you you're nuts. And speaking of anywhere, our next speaker is Dominic. Where are you calling from, Dom?
Donegal, up the northwest of Ireland. So right up in the hills in the middle of nowhere. So a very strange place for an innovator, but I've lived here a long time now. So
over to you, sir.
Great. So I'm Dominic Kelly. I'm from Cantan, which is part of the Keywords Group, and I'm here to talk about self-regulated translation community. Next slide. So what we're talking about, well, we're talking about the streamlined process we have in our product called Cantan Stream, which is currently used by 40% of the gaming companies in the world that are using it for player support. What does this mean? Well, a lot of the time you need real-time translation for chat and messaging. And the only way to do this is use a crowd. So in order for a crowd to be scalable, it needs to be regulated. So if we start off, this is the kind of the let's say the context of the innovation. So if you want to hit a few animations through, so documents content gets passed through, they automatically get quality scored using a QES. So we use our AI engine to forecast what the quality would be like based on machine translation. Anything below a certain quality level is predefined by yourselves, and anything that is above does not get post-edited at all. So anything that is below this quality level goes on to the community. Now, herein lies the challenge. The community is a mob. It's a crowd of people that you don't necessarily know if they're good, bad, or indifferent often when you do crowdsourcing. So the idea is to regulate this. And we do this by adding in some sort of controls we call invigilation, and also that QS mechanism I mentioned before. So hit next. Yeah. So we do this by adding a few new actors in here. So inside the community, we elevate 2 or 3 people inside the community to be invigilators and profilers. These are people that are part of the community that help score an A/B test whether the actual translation of an individual post editor meets up to scratch, if they're doing too much post editing, and so on and so forth. And also the profiler. These are someone who, for example, looks at the profile of the community and makes sure that they're fulfilling their commitments. And these are part of the community. They are not something that is internally inside the translation agency or inside the end client. This is actually part of the community. And it's fully automated, which is the best thing. In terms of what that kind of ends up feeling like, well, these guys, you know, are in charge of, if we want to skip to the next one, are in charge of ranking. And what the system does is automatically the system takes the first 100 post-editing tasks. It gathers all the data, it gathers all the information about what they've edited, how they've edited it, and then it starts to do this invigilation project where the person is actually ranking them. After it's ranked them, they get put into brackets, and based on their brackets, they can go up and down. So if you've done 100 invigilation tasks and you're an editor, you can be ranked quite high. The more you score, the better. You get paid because, of course, as you do better, you get higher rates inside the system too. And it's used for extremely fast translations. I know I've only got 30 seconds, so next. If you're able to store and record all the information about what's been post-edited, how it's been post-edited, the QS score of the MT, the quality score of the person, then what you end up having is a fully automated performance management system that is no human intervention, and it records everything. And it's all done by the community. So it's not something that's done inside the system. One thing I want to mention is after the first 100 invigilation tasks are completed, the AI system basically looks at the user, and if the user is performing badly, adds more invigilation tasks so you can see if the score is getting better. And if they're doing well, it does less. So it kind of balances the amount of tests you do.
Thanks, Dom.
Yes.
Invigilation, a new word of the day. Dragons, questions for Dom?
I just learned a new word. I thought it was just me, but thanks, Dave, for sharing that you hadn't heard this either. All right.
Invigilation is the process of quality scoring a group of individuals rather than an individual person.
Mm-hmm.
Dominic, and that's done by the community, as in players.
Yes, so it could be a private or public community. So within Keywords, they have 16,000 translators on their public community that they use for the player support mechanism. And sometimes a chat might come in, for example, and it needs to be done in like 3 seconds. So they throw it on the community, and it could be a sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, and the community get on and post edits it. And that's the community that you're managing. So you're managing your post editing community. And then the invigilators are people that you elevate from that community to automatically, let's say, control or try to regulate what's going on. And the system then, what it does is the AI part is it starts to look at that community and start to create those invigilation tasks for them automatically. So it's still a human doing an A/B test, but how many they do, when they do them, and how often they do them, that's all automated and AI based.
Okay, and this happens all the time on all the requests, or
not all the time, not all the requests. So what the first thing we do with every user when they start off this average ranking, and we do 100 invigilation tasks on their first 100 items they do, and that gives them a solid like score. So they're either superb or poor, whatever it is, right? Based on that, and from that then we then do less invigilation tasks, but we do invigilation tasks based on the QES score, based on the language, if it's a new language for them. We do it based on the quality score of the content that's been sent through. So if it falls out of the domain for the MT engine, then obviously that would need to be invigilated, because you want to make sure that the post editing is done right, and so on and so forth. So it's quite smart in terms of how many tasks it gives you.
Excellent. Right. Thanks, Tom. And Peter, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so can you give me an example of a use case for this?
Yeah, let's do the player support mechanism. So I'm Blizzard, which Blizzard use this as part of Keywords, and they have a user who's playing World of Warcraft, and I've just lost my coins. I'm in Russia. So I start typing, "Hi, I've lost my coins," to player support. That goes onto the system. The system automatically routes it to a player support engineer. That person is English speaking, doesn't know Russian. So it gets machine translated into English. And then that person then post edits that machine translation and sends it back to the user, so the Russian user only sees Russian. The quality scoring system I mentioned is at the back end. So when that post editing is done, who does it and when it's done is all kind of managed by the community.
I see. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks, Dom. And yeah, hopefully before the end of this show, you'll let us know how do we say that in Russian. We'll leave that with you, Dom, on the chat. And thanks again. So moving on, we have Igor up next, and Igor, we'd ask you to join the stage.
All right, so I'm ready when you are.
Great, over to you.
Hi, I'm Igor from Smartcad. So scalable continuous localization is usually seen as a process that can only be implemented for software strings. At Smartcad, we started building connectors in a way that enables continuous localization for any type of content that comes from content management systems, cloud folders, or other external sources. Next slide, please. So here's how the traditional connectors work. The process is very manual. Every time content in the CMS is edited or updated, one has to select the pieces that need to be translated, create a translation job, and send it over to a translation management system. Then wait till all of the translations are finished and manually approve or import them back into the CMS. This works for infrequent updates. But if one decides to implement continuous localization on top of such a process, they will most likely fail. The more often you want to drop new content into your TMS, the more fragmented translation jobs will become, and both localization managers and linguists will be suffering from this. Next slide, please. So at Smartcad, we decided to rethink all of that and started building connectors tailored specifically for scalability. Here's what we do. Once the connector is plugged in, it establishes a two-way synchronization between a CMS and a TMS. And with that, every change that is provided on a CMS side gets reflected in our TMS, where linguists can continue providing translations for just the new parts of the content. These translations get pushed into the CMS automatically as well. So you no longer see an endless queue of tiny translation jobs. You get a single permanent project that shows the entirety of your localizable content. As localization manager, you can see the whole picture. As a linguist, you get more context and more time for translation. There's no person in the middle that needs to push the buttons, so there are no delays and less room for human error. All of that allows to enable a truly continuous localization for your marketing or support content. Next slide, please. So let's quickly recap those approaches. The traditional one is very manual and it's hard to scale, while the new one is built specifically for scalability. The traditional one leads to small fragmented jobs with tight deadlines, thus affecting quality and making everyone unhappy. We address this by providing stable translation projects and giving linguists more context and more time for translation. In the traditional process, the translation management happens in each individual CMS and in the TMS. Ours allows to manage everything on the TMS side alone with less effort. Also, our approach enables efficient selective post-editing scenarios, which I'll be happy to explain further in the Q&A session. So we encourage you to try new connectors by going to smartcad.com/integrations. We have the first batch of connectors that use this approach for Google Docs, WordPress, Contentful, and Zendesk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor. Very visual and really good on time, by the way. Questions, Dragons?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, thanks, Igor. This is quite interesting. I've actually faced a similar problem, but with software applications that my team has been working on. So do you have any plans for building integrations into software applications that will allow, for example, app developers to take advantage of this service?
Well, we do already provide some solutions for continuous localization for software string. It's like at large a solved problem. I mean, everybody is like, there are many companies besides Smartcad that also do that. So people know how to approach this. So if you are interested, you can definitely go to our website and look out for specific, like how do we approach software localization. It's the same process, but instead of working with like CMS, you're working with Git repository. Everything else stays the same. You can do this like continuous, like two-way synchronization. Everything is like monitored. You have a stable project. This is quite important. And you get like automatic commits as soon as translators provide changes to the strings. Those commits can go directly into the repository, so you can trigger CI/CD builds, etc.
Okay, thank you. And how do you account for minor changes that may not require somebody to actually translate that?
Well, it depends on changes. Like with continuous localization, it's exactly easy to do those kind of changes from both sides. If a developer, for example, fixes a typo, changes like a punctuation mark and uploads that to the repo, or content manager changes that specific thing in a CMS, that string will be propagated to the TMS. It will appear as a new segment for translation, but you will have your previous translation, your translation memories. So you can easily apply those as like with high confidence as a TM matches and fix that. Also, one thing that I mentioned before is like selective post-editing. This means that since you have all the content available for translation in your TMS without having to create those translation jobs, you can go and find like a type or like do a small change to any string that is exposed in the TMS, and that change will be propagated without you having to create a translation job specifically.
Thank you.
Igor, I have another question.
Okay.
So this is the process innovation challenge, right? And there are so many connectors out there. And as Peter was just asking for software translation, for all sorts of things, right? How is yet another connector in our industry? How is it innovative? I'm trying to get to what makes this one innovative.
Yeah, it's all about
the APIs out there, right? Connecting systems.
Yeah.
what is specific? What is so cool about this one here?
Well, it exactly allows you to scale. If you look at existing connectors, they're usually built around the same principles, around the principles that are used for translation management. You have translation jobs. Everything gets, like nowadays, all the translation jobs get so small that they are hard to scale and hard to manage. Like a typical translation job for like a large translation vendor that was a number that was circulating a year ago was around 200 words. So if you get those small things in 200 words, you never understand what you're translating even. You are translating just random pieces that are thrown at you as a linguist. And this is why this continuous localization is usually something that is, well, it's not implemented yet. It's something that is considered as a next step in, like automation. So we are tapping into this like area and showcasing how to do this exactly continuous localization that requires 0 clicks and 0 management from the localization manager just to move, like data around from CMS to TMS and back. So that really allows you to do like releasing your content in parallel in multiple languages. Whereas if you want to do the same with existing connectors, existing TMS solutions, you have to have 1, 2, or more people who will be overseeing the process just to make it work.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Quick follow-up
question
go ahead. On that. How do you accommodate or provide for the ability to add some context to the translation, for example, a screenshot or something like that?
Well, it depends on connector. Like each connector should be able to provide some context. For example, if you are talking about a Figma connector, you can easily provide screenshots for every single string that you're translating. For some others that are more like content-based, HTML-based, you can provide some context to that and provide like real like preview ability in the CAD tool. So we do support those things, though they are not supported for all of the connectors. For Google Docs, for example, we do support this like visual preview of the document when you're translating that. But in addition to that, it's also important to preserve the document structure. So one thing, if you are, again, working with those small individual translation jobs that contain only just the document that needs to be translated, or even just a few strings that are new. So with that, you don't have the full context. But if you are seeing in the TMS the entirety of your content and the pages are named the same way they're named in your CMS, for example, you see the whole structure and the linguist understands what specific section of the site they're translating. So that also adds additional context for the localization manager and for the linguist.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Igor. Well answered in the questions as well. You got a good few there. So we'll just ask our next innovator to come on stage. And that's Sean from VMware. So Sean, we just ask you to join us, please.
My colleague Vince will present our tool.
Okay, so
yes, I will go ahead and do that. Yep.
Over to you.
Okay, let me go ahead and turn on my camera. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for giving us the time today to present. So Xiang and myself are from VMware. We'll represent the product globalization engineering team there, taking care of program management, and he's part of our testing team. So, okay, let's move on to the first slide. So today we're here to present the Globalization 360 Hub. The 360 Hub is actually a combination of some efforts that we had for many years in terms of trying to present a unified view of all our testing efforts as well as globalization efforts at VMware. So the idea was that whenever you at the enterprise level testing status, globalization status, you will find them everywhere. It can be on the Excel spreadsheet, it can be on the Confluence page, And worse, it can even be via emails. So the idea was that, can we consolidate everything into one place and provide multiple dimensions there, such as test execution, a quality scorecard, or globalization tool adoptions, and finally a maturity level, all in one place. So that was part of our first efforts there. And the user persona that we pursued there were the product developer, wanting to know what the globalization issues are, as well as a product manager, asking us what are the critical issues, what is the project status. Our globalization QE team, wanting to know about test coverage and automation status. And finally, my team, asking about the globalization score for a specific product, or what were the critical issues, and really what was the maturity of that product. Next slide, please. So the main advantage of a tool is really a full visibility on every globalization related task. And this is achieved also via connection to systems like Jira. We use Jira at VMware, as well as Bugzilla, our in-house bug system, or Confluence, or even other database systems. So you have full visibility on every task, and you're able to either drill down or drill back up on those. And with those, we're able to have some globalization related decisions. So you can see an example of a dashboard here. We have a maturity level that's measured in terms of tool adoption, as well as scores in each of our IIT9 levels, and adoption of a service. So how do we consider a product to be fully mature? It's really when there's a full adoption of everything that we provide. And when we see that, we feel like proud parents. The team took over globalization. They need minimal help from us. And now, we're able to move on to other less mature products and help them in their road to globalization.
10 seconds left.
Yep, and that's it. That is it for my pitch.
Thank you very much, Vincent and Sean. Proud parents. I really like that maturity score idea. That's very interesting. I'm sure you're going to get some good questions on that. Dragons.
Thank you, Vince. I really think this is very, very cool. Coming from a big company like Salesforce, this is I can see the usefulness of it in really multinational, very, very big companies, right? But any dashboard like that is only as good as the data you feed in. So exactly. How do you gather the data, and how do you make sure the data is up to date?
Right. So that was a big effort at the beginning in terms of consolidating the data company-wide into Jira. A lot of our data now resides in Jira. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the cleanup of the data, our globalization QE team is ultimately responsible for some of that data that's there. Mm-hmm. So there is an aspect of them double checking the data, making sure that it is correct. But most of it is automated because it comes from Jira.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't know if this question goes too deep, but how do you what technology are you actually building this dashboard in? Is this a connector to Jira that offers some UI, or how did you come up with what we're really seeing here, with the actual visual representation of the data?
Right, and I think for this question, I may refer to Xiang, as he was the main driver behind the creation of the dashboard. Xiang?
Front-end UI, we're using Angular, and back-end, we're using Python Flask to provide web services. And yeah, we have different data sources. Jira is definitely one of the main source. And we built data warehouse, and the data are synchronized every day.
Okay, all right, thank you. Last question from my side. So if this is custom built within VMware for VMware data, how can it profit other folks in the industry? Will it be open sourced, for example? Is there a template for building this, a blueprint that other companies could follow? But how do we move with this innovation, other companies forward in the industry, rather than just improve things at VMware?
Right, and this is really one of the reasons we're presenting here is that we are actually on the roadmap to open source this. We're trying to gather questions on this in terms of, you know, what would be the needs, or how can we make it general enough to be able to serve the broader community there. But really the idea is that, you know, yes, we will put this out, and then, you know, different companies and so on will be able to reuse this to point to their own data source and get the same benefit of that visibility in one place.
And that data source would not just have to be Jira. One could add manually data and from other sources. Okay.
As a matter of fact, even testing systems such as HPQC can be also plugged into this.
Very cool. Thank you,
Very
guys.
good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cornelia. Any more questions? We'll take one more, Dragons.
I love this as well, I have to say. So it's solving really the visibility problem, right? That's the main use.
Yes, and gives you really that same look and feel every time, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to getting different testing reports and different look and feel there.
Yeah. And is this being consumed mostly by yourselves within the globalization product department, or are you making this available to kind of senior leadership?
Yes, it is available to all senior leadership at VMware, as well as all product leadership. So there's some aspect of scorecards that's stored in there for every release. We have a score, and, you know, should we move on to the next round, we'll explain that more into details. Each of those, you know, different dimensions that we have there.
I love this. I think it's probably helping a lot, right, with getting the developer teams in line and so on, right?
Right, and also the adoption of globalization, right, within a whole suite of products. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther and Vincent. Yeah, nice teaser trailer there, Vincent. We like your style. Well done. And we will move on to our next innovator. Next on stage is Cara. Cara, you're very welcome. And you're calling in from Illinois?
Yes.
Excellent. So welcome to the stage. We'll get you going here now. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm from Termologic, a terminology consulting firm. And today I'm going to talk about terminology and micro content in the context of agile localization. Please move forward. So the word terminology in our industry has a lot of baggage. It carries with it a set of principles and methods that unfortunately do not meet the needs of agile localization. For example, each term that is the focus of the process is semantically specialized, or supposed to be, or perhaps difficult to translate. Brand names are included so that their translations can be carefully controlled. And multi-word expressions such as acronyms can be difficult for translators. So that's all great, there's no argument there. But are these terms enough? Another problem is that most terminology resources are developed in silos without any direct connection to the organization's actual content. Finally, a lot of resources are spent on curating the terminology. For example, getting marketing to do reviews and approvals. I'm not saying that these practices have no purpose, They do, but they're just not enough in Agile localization. An Agile localization project contains many repeated short strings. Many of the words in these strings are just ordinary words with no special meaning at all. An example is UI labels with words like save and close. Agile projects are fast, so translator productivity is key. Consistency of translations across strings is also very important. The strings change frequently, and often short strings lack context, as we've already seen in a previous presentation. For example, in a COVID phone app that I'm currently localizing, I found a message containing only one word, test. How do you translate that? Does it mean, here's your test? Or click to open your test? Or go get a test? Or your test failed, or whatever? We just don't know because there's lack of context. And forget about curating anything. There's no time for that. Next slide, please. A big problem is that the terms needed for a localization project are rarely found in any supplied glossaries or term bases. There's always a large gap between company term bases and Agile localization projects. What's the reason for that? Well, we're adding terms to term bases based on old, outdated selection criteria, which are way too narrow. We need to shift our focus to micro content. Micro content are small units of text. We can extract micro content directly from the translatable strings. Focus on the repeated units, since productivity of translators and consistency of sub-segment units are the key goals here. Next slide. So localizers need multilingual micro-content resources, so we need to be able to quickly develop them. This requires a unit extraction process with looser selection criteria. We must pull micro-content directly from the translatable strings. We can then use corpus analysis tools to quickly identify target language equivalents from existing memories, by text, or other reliable corpora. Finally, we need to use appropriate tools for micro content. And unfortunately, my experience is that conventional CAT tools are just not properly set up for this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Cara. Well done. So micro content and creating terminology out of smaller and smaller words as we all get modularized a bit more. You've got me thinking on different use of the word test as well. Well done. Dragons, do we have questions for Cara?
Peter, you're gonna go first?
Yeah. So Cara, thanks a lot for this. I think you did a good job describing the problem, but I don't think I quite got the solution. So have you actually developed some sort of product to address this, or what is the exact solution here?
Okay, very good question. I'd like to remind everybody that this is a process innovation challenge we're talking about here, not a technology innovation challenge. And so I've identified process-related issues here that need to be recognized and embraced by the industry. I'm not a technology developer. This is a challenge that I throw on the table for technology developers, particularly in CAT tools. I'm really pleased to see some connectors being mentioned today between CAT tools and development repositories like GitHub. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We need a lot more from the technology developers. For example, direct connectors to large-scale corpora, automatic analysis of bytext, even term extraction. I mean, it's pathetic. The term extraction technologies that are currently offered in most CAT tools is really bad. And there are better solutions out there. We need to build a workbench for Agile terminology, if you want to call it that, or Agile micro content management. Yeah, this is a challenge. I've got the process down pat. I'm not a technology developer, and I'd really like to see some solutions. I can help with the ideas.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So do you plan to partner with somebody to actually maybe move this forward, or you're just throwing it out there and hoping that?
Well, that is I'm open to offers, and I'm here. I've already know many of the people on the challenge today, or through directly or indirectly. I've worked with many of these companies before. I'm an independent, process consultant, if you will. So I'm here at your service. We need better tooling. I just finished localizing a COVID app with students at the University of Illinois. It was a nightmare because the technology failed us on left, right, and center. So we do need some, we need innovative technology to address the innovation challenge, the process innovation challenge here.
Thank you, Kara, for your contribution here. I do believe that a lot of this exists already. As a matter of fact, I hold a couple of patents on it. So we do have, I think the industry has done quite a bit of work on showing strings in context. If you look at modern translation memory systems, right? They have a little pane at the bottom that shows you the content of the context of the file. You have preview possibilities. You can view entire pages, even of presentations. You can see a lot in context. So I believe a lot of it is there. But for what made you enter yourself here as a contestant, I want to understand your term of your use of Agile in this, because it is a software development methodology which is very well defined. What do you mean by Agile here in your presentation?
I think it's because the multilingual micro content resources that I'm advocating be developed, they have to be responsive and reactive to the content that are in Agile, that is being pushed through the Agile development process. And we just don't have that right now. I'm very familiar with CAT tools and what they offer in terms of looking up strings in context and so on. But what we really need is access to more resources within and outside of the actual localization project. For example, the COVID app that I'm localizing right now, there's bytext that are available from Taos organization, for example. There's bytext available in Sketch Engine. These are additional resources that if put at the fingertips of people working on a localization project, that would really vastly improve their work. And the term, term extraction, there is. I know about that too. I also have patents in that area, but they're not very good. They do not they do not work on the right selection criteria. So there's just some tweaks that I think need to be addressed there.
So by Agile, you mean you were using words like reactive, flexible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but not tied into the usual 2-week Scrum process. Okay, I got it now. Okay, yes.
I can foresee a future conversation continuing here. Maybe you guys can...
Context is king. You can't translate anything you don't understand.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
And garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's where Kara is going with this. If I'm understanding it correctly, Kara, I do want to understand what you were trying to present here. So you're saying a translator cannot translate anything without context. We need to find better ways of giving translators context.
That's one part of the problem. Yeah.
That's an eternal problem in our industry. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you, Kara. Looks like this conversation can continue. Speaking of conversations, we mentioned innovations can really come from anywhere. And Kara reminded us that while we call this the Process Innovation Challenge, we get process innovations, technical innovations, the whole shooting lot, and really good to see the process ones in there as well. So thank you, Kara. And let's move on to our next innovator. So Rafael, we'll ask you to ready yourself for the stage.
Right. Thank you. Okay, I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Well, over to you.
Right. So I'm Rafael, and I will talk about context in translation, about caffeine, about context, and about confusion. So it will be my take on the same problem, actually, of lack of context during translation. So let's get to the next slide. And let me first share the story when it hit me personally, the lack of context, because in our office there is a coffee machine, and once signaled an error for me. It said empty tray, right? It sort of communicates with humans via written messages. And actually, I'm a software developer, and I'm used to talk with computers. And what they do is they signal errors by describing the error. So I took it that empty tray is a description of an error, right? Some tray is empty and needs to be filled with something, with coffee beans, for instance, right? But there's another possibility. If the machine tells the empty tray, it might actually be an imperative. It's like, please empty the tray. And it turned out it was the latter case. And I got really confused, and I didn't have my caffeine. I didn't have my coffee. So that was a drag for me that day. Right, let's go to the next slide. So the problem, yes, as the previous innovators pointed out, the problem is that in translation we have segments with no context, right? So empty tray or update would be another example, right? The word update is an update or please update. The word processing then is an act of processing or it's processing, right? It's part of a longer label. And my idea for a solution for this particular problem is to signal it, because, well, of course, there are solutions providing the context somehow, right? They can show you the preview of the translated document. They can provide the context, but sometimes it's just not possible. In these cases, I reckon we should flag a potentially ambiguous segment for further checks. So to alert is the solution, signal potential ambiguity. And how? Let's go to the next slide. I did the following prototype. I brought in a huge corpus of English texts. I use XTM AI. I used some of the technology magic to annotate the corpus, each word of the corpus on the part of speech level. So I figured out the parts of speeches parts of speech of every word in the corpus, and I counted. And I saw the words which tend to be very ambiguous, like the word update, not surprising, yeah. Appearing as noun in 56% of time, as verb in 44% of the time. Anchor, usually a noun, but also a verb, and sometimes an adjective. So what we have is a way of signaling a potential ambiguity that will have to be checked later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Good on time too, might add. Okay. There seems to be a bit of a trend, right, in the innovation out of context, glossarization, trying to give a little bit more rich information to translators about words ahead of time. Is it just me picking that up? Maybe I need that cup of coffee. So, Dragons, questions?
I have a question on Rafael, on the corpus that you how you count it. Okay, so you are quite right. One cannot do much with a word like test or update. Save file. Am I supposed to do something, and so on? Okay, fine, but you said you counted your corpus from English. Ambiguities that English has are usually between noun and verb. Other languages might have them between an adjective and a noun, or an adjective and an adverb or something. So right there, this is based on English, right?
Yes.
So
for now, yes.
Have you tried this with other languages?
Yes, actually, future experiments will be carried on other languages. And actually, yes, you're right that nouns and verbs are the one which are the source of confusion in English most of the time. But not only, even between individual verbs, you can now, for example, distinguish between an infinitive and an imperative form of a verb. That was the source of confusion in my particular example, right? That postponed my coffee making.
So a bunch of these. So the first thing I'm observing, that ambiguities are language specific. They depend on the grammatical patterns in that language. Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
So
yes.
in
and I'm
French,
planning
for example. I have I can easily tell whether it's an infinitive or whether it's a second person imperative. No, right? Okay, so that's the one caveat I wanted to offer. And then the second one is, you being a developer, shouldn't you rather be screaming, shame on you developers for giving us files that have no context. Give me context. And look, there's maybe 20 in software. There's maybe 20 elements on a screen that are UI elements that are different. Button, title, table header, column header, and so on. So if a developer has a super easy way of inserting that context, which UI element the string refers to, in either the description in XML files or put some sort of tag, voila, the translator has context. So then all of that would go away.
Well, actually, we also have that, yes, but if only it was that simple in all the cases possible. But there are scenarios in which you just don't have that. You just don't have this information ready. I would say, not in a structured way. So what I'm saying is that on some occasions, what you have is text only, right? And then the context is there, but it cannot be easily integrated into the system and cannot be shown in a nice way. So there are cases where this happens, and this solution is for these cases.
For when I have individual words that are then compiled together in some sort of text.
Yes. Yeah.
But the translator won't see the whole text and won't have the context.
Yes, and these are typically like UI labels. So these are just individual words that they do not compose sentences. They are just there as single isolated words.
Okay, that's the backup solution, so to say.
Yes, you may say, yeah.
This is your last resort to tag an ambiguity.
Exactly.
Last resort.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
Now I got it.
All right.
Good.
Thank you, Cornelia. Esther, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what Cornelia had. I was wondering how you're using it. If it's just basically to say, okay, here's a flag, go back to the developers and get the clarity at that point, which seems like a missed opportunity, to integrate this with their cycles so that they can see themselves where they need to give that context.
Yeah, sometimes it is possible. Sometimes it's harder or more expensive, or there's no time for that. So yes, so this is a backup solution that we offer in these cases.
It would be lovely to see it integrated with, with pseudo translation technology and so on, so that it can be done at that early stage.
I guess so. Yes, that's a good way to improve it.
Excellent. Thanks, Esther and Rafael. Peter, any last questions for Rafael?
Yeah, from my experience, especially in some languages that I'm familiar with, the meaning of a word sometimes can depend on, for example, the intonation, and other things. So how do you accommodate for those sort of ambiguities?
For now, we haven't processed those languages. Well, I think I know which kind of languages you mean, like Mandarin language, for example. That's the first that comes to my mind, and some others too. What would be needed in that case would be a spoken corpus, right? So voice corpora. There are such resources on the market. So what you could do in that case is to analyze those voice corpora and just count the potential ambiguity for homographs that have potentially different tonality, right, and different meanings depending on the tone. Right. So this could be done, I believe.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Rafael. Well explained. And we're nearly there, folks. So you've heard 7 innovators. We have just the one left. So Noor, we'll ask you to join us on stage and talk us through your innovation.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone. It seems that I got the graveyard shift, being the last presenter. So hopefully there's still enough juice in our brains. So I'll try to make sure that I keep it crisp. Thank you very much for taking the time. My name is Noor Hussein. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Tarjama, based out of London, Dubai, but currently in warm, sunny, and sandy Riyadh. Today, I want to discuss with you one of the innovations that we've done. We call it the Hamburger, and at the end of the deck, you're going to see why we refer to that. In the next slide, please, you'll see the big problem that we've been trying to resolve. Our problem is specific to Arabic and also to e-commerce. Since COVID, e-commerce has exploded. Everyone has gone online. Everyone wants to move to a marketplace. Now, the challenge there is translating content to Arabic is the equivalent of translating content to European. There is no such thing as Arabic. Arabic has more than 30 distinct dialects. Trying to educate the world and customers on that is very difficult. The second part is there's a lot of untranslatable words, in particular new products. How do you translate a cloud kitchen? Such concept never existed in Arabic before, or an air purifier. You would lose meaning completely, and if you lose meaning, you can't potentially sell your product online if the buyers don't do that. Now, the biggest part was about volume and speed. So there's massive volumes of e-commerce SKUs or products online. Second part is accuracy. To give you some context, the word tarjama means translation, subtitling, and interpretation in Arabic. But also the word bread in one dialect is absolutely offensive in a completely different dialect. So that's a little bit challenging from an accuracy perspective. Cost, obviously, got millions of products. You're not going to be paying for all of that. And finally, ease of use. So in the next slide, you'll see from a problem perspective, what was the solution mindset that we had? So we started shifting our mindset from making people want things into making things that people want. So we changed completely our product architecture, and we focused on tailoring our own translation management system. So we built our own in-house TMS, because none of the other translation management systems could actually meet the Arabic specific requirements, things like diacrities or dialect specific, etc. The second one was adding a creative copywriting layer there as well, so that we can understand and add more products to the dialect itself or to the language itself. Finally, is we also integrated our augmented intelligence. So we have our own machine learning and artificial intelligence team that focuses on training custom specific machine translation for customers, and we managed to bring that down to around 2 to 3 days, depending on the volume of data that the customer can share with us. And obviously, making it easy for our clients to categorize their products, select and advise which products will be done through machine translation and which products will be done through MTPE. Finally, on the next slide, you'll see our augmented intelligence is what we call the Hamburger. On the top there, we've got our T portal, which is a client gateway that can connect to any product catalog or CMS that they want. And in the bottom there, we've got our own machine translation engine. And in the heart of that patty of that burger is basically the human and the artificial intelligence there. Our customers were able to see 60% cost savings because we're able to leverage MTPE and advise which products require that. Faster time to market. So every day your product is not localized, you're losing. And finally, also a quality assurance, meeting 99% quality assurance and being able to have smarter workflows. So finally, for us, it's about focusing on building something that the customer wants rather than pushing our customers to buy a product that we've built. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Noor. Always like to see ROI spelled out like that. Very interesting innovation. Let's start with a stare on questions.
Yeah, I love this. It's really, really interesting. Noor, I'd love to understand more how you tackle the problem of the different dialects within the TMS.
Absolutely. So we're able to customize and create dialect specific. So we've done some work, for example, with Alexa. The Amazon team was trying to create an Alexa that comprehends Arabic. And the biggest challenge they met was someone in Saudi and someone in Egypt are completely different. They'll ask what time is it in completely different areas. So what we've done is we've created our testing and profiling of linguists in that format. So that was the first step. Just as much as you would test your linguist for French, If you want to do the same in Arabic, just do it in Hijazi dialect or Najdi dialect or North African dialect, etc. And once we were able to customize and able to rank and tag our linguists based on their dialect-specific areas, we were also able to appoint them on markets or projects for client, depending on where the marketplace is targeting. So if you're launching an e-commerce platform, the first question we ask is, who's your customer? Who's your audience? Who's buying this product? And we can even advise the client by building a hyper persona for them. So being able to understand, is this a product that is going for a 40-year-old male in Saudi Arabia or a 32-year-old female in Egypt? Because what they will name, how you name a skirt in the Middle East is 16, 17 different types as well. So that's why it was a bit hard for us to rely on any machine translation. And we integrate that quite interestingly in our TMS.
Very interesting. I might have more questions, but I'll let the other dragons go.
Thanks, Mr. Peter. Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, you know, are there other solutions out there that can provide the same, you know, service, or is there nothing out there, and therefore you have to come up with this specifically?
Oh, we looked for a while. We tried 5 different TMSs. We pretty much tried every single machine translation out there. We've released a white paper after benchmarking our machine translation to the standard Arabic out there. The challenge is, as I said, Arabic is a beautiful language. It's very unique. We sometimes refer to it as complex, but we don't want to make it sound like it's a bad language. It's really, really beautiful in its own way, but that makes our life absolutely challenging. Also, crowdsourcing Arabic from an MT perspective, such as Google Translate, just makes it even worse. Because it just, you're suddenly putting 70, 80 different potential correct translations, but are not accurate. So we were very, very adamant on trying to figure out how can we solve the problem that the customer really has? How can we ensure that the experience we are providing is available at the defining moments for the customers? And the biggest part there was about just understanding the life cycle of the consumer themselves. How does my customer, how do the clients want the ideal situation? And I think we had the benefit of being agile and small enough as an organization that we could just pause and say, you know what, just scrap everything. This is exactly how we're going to build our solution, and this is how we're going to constantly adjust it. And our customers were brilliant. Our customer advisory board were giving us input. This is what we need. This is what we would want. So it really helped us guide us from a process perspective. But if there is a solution out there, we would love to find it, because we continue to invest also in integrating this with our freelance marketplace, but also building solutions such as Arabic spell checks, for example. Something like that isn't out there. So unfortunately, when you have a language that almost 500 million people speak it, but very few of them have tech infrastructure, we have to rely on importing technology from, you know, North America or Europe. But no one is sitting, you know, in West Coast or in Europe thinking, I want to fix the challenge of the Arabic language, you know. So we had to think of that ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Very, very interesting, Noor. I mean, at the PIC, we have innovations that are innovative. You know that it's an innovative, and it's only innovative because it's a problem someone needs to solve, and they just figure out a way of solving it, right? That doesn't exist in the past. And sometimes we find innovations that can be repurposed, you know, and we love seeing where they come from. So thank you for sharing some of that. And I'll just ask Cornelia, just in case she has a quick question for you before we let you go. Cornelia.
You're on mute, Cornelia.
Am I unmuted now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's super interesting too. I wondered though how I mean, I come from the e-commerce space, right? So every e-commerce implementation is a little bit different, right? And how do you get the content out of the implementation of the site. Does this only work for the catalog? Because that's bulk content. That's sort of easier, I think, than the often marketing-driven storefront interface. So how do you tackle that?
Absolutely, that's a brilliant question. We had a very similar situation with a massive sportswear customer as well. So for us, we can work on just the product catalog or the dynamic content, what we call, or also on the static content. The value of adding the copywriters and the creative writers in that layer is that we're able to parse and segment the content and send it to the right linguist based on their domain and also based on on their dialect. So if you want your just basic product content, for example, I don't know, blue shorts, size medium, that can easily just run through a machine translation post editing. But if you want to have, explore your happiness with this beautiful pair of sunglasses, that's going to require transcreation rather than translation. So it's going to be directed towards the copywriter as well. But also what we help customers is in the initial stage, we help advise them on categorizing their content into tiers based on the price of the SKU. So you don't want to be spending, $2 on a product that's going to be selling for $1. However, if you're selling a $2,000, phone or TV, you want to make sure that that process just runs through a full 3 layers of, machine translation, post editing, review, quality assurance, and maybe transcreation as well to add that creative layer.
I was more thinking about the storefront with the marketing context, promotions, discounts, campaigns that are being driven over the storefront. These things for big companies can change several times a day. And during the holiday, for example, 4 or 5 times a day, there's a new promotion running or so. And then there's the catalog, which is the more or less static content. So the actual storefront interface and how that's implemented, that's different technologies and so on. So is your solution already working also on the dynamic content of the storefront interface, what the end user actually sees?
When you say storefront, you mean on the landing page?
The website.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Right. We work on that, as I said, just on a transcreation. So we basically just parse and send the content to a different, let's say, talent or resource, because they're more marketing driven. They're more, and they also will understand do I need to say, click here for an instant quote or price, for example, in Kuwait, or do I remove the word instant in Sudan because that gives a negative connotation, for example?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Cornelia. Thank you, Noor. Very interesting stuff. I think giving us food for thought. One of the things we brought in this time around was just to make more time for the Q&A. I'd just like to thank everyone for staying with us here. But as you can see in the Q&A, it just allows us all to see a little bit more about what the innovation can do, depending on where it is on its stage. Sometimes it's ready to go, sometimes it's gone to market, as we saw just there from Noor. Noor, thank you very much. Before we wrap up, let's just remind ourselves of, we saw 8 innovators today. Thank you to each and every one of you. We know that the preparation required to even get to this round is quite a lot, and we appreciate your time and effort and interest in sharing your innovation, which is what the PIC is all about. It's sharing ideas, and that's why we run it. So thank you, one and all. I want to thank our dragons, so Esther, Cornelia, and Peter. Thank you very much for your great questions. And
it was fun.
Yeah, good.
I learned a lot.
Good stuff. So before we wrap up, and as Cornelia says, she learned a lot. You've had a chance to learn even more, right, Alex?
Yeah. So again, now we've got the hard task of deciding who goes on until the final round, which will be held again on Wednesday, October 20th, as part of LocWorld Wide 45. So the next step in this process is that our dragons will deliberate, and they will score our innovators. And after we aggregate the final scoring there, we will announce early or later this week, or at the latest a week from today, there will be published on the PIC website the list of the 5 innovators who will go on. And in the final round, I would like to remind everyone that's new to the PIC that actually your vote will matter as well. So we will incorporate the audience vote as a part of the final round. So please don't miss that. There will be a poll that will run simultaneously, and the way that we do it is we weight 50% of the judges voting and 50% of the audience voting to help determine who our process innovator of the year is. So don't miss that chance. Make sure you're registered for LocWorld Wide 45, and we hope to see you there on October 20th. I would also just briefly, before I send it back over to Dave, I'd like to thank, on behalf of LocWorld Conference, our co-founders, Donna Parrish and Ulrich Hennis. Thank you to all of our innovators and dragons for participating. The strength of this competition, it comes down to the fantastic people who are out there innovating. And we created the PIC as a platform to help spread innovation. And again, although it is a competition, this is a friendly competition, and we're all about elevating the industry as a whole. And so this is a safe place. If you're out there and you have an innovative solution, we'd really like to have you as a part of the next PIC. So look for the call for papers for the next PIC. And the last thing I'll say is that this may be our last virtual PIC. We're hoping, and we're very excited to be going back to Berlin with LocWorld next July 11th through the 13th. And the PIC will be back on stage with the bright lights. So don't miss that opportunity.
Thanks, Alex. And friendly indeed. Even our dragons are friendly. So just before I sign off, just a quick shout out to our last winner. In fact, Multilingual Magazine allowed our last winner to have an article published, which if you do have a subscription, you can check that out. Rickard Engels, our last winner of the PIC last June. And you can read about his thoughts and innovation right there. So thanks very much to Mario Lane and the team at Multilingual for that. And that's basically our bag. That's the show. Thank you for showing up. Thanks to our innovators and dragons. And perhaps we'll see you for the next part, which is the final, as Alex said, in a couple of weeks' time. Keep innovating. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.